She's the executive director of CASA, and she's on the hot seat right after this. Ginny Baker's on the spotlight. Don't go anywhere. From the beautiful Olathe building in downtown Russellville, we welcome you into the spotlight. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668. Cruise on over to russellvilleliving.com. One of our fine agents is always ready, willing, and able to serve you in any real estate need. Give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668. Don't forget KARV every Friday morning at 8:30, the Spotlight on Carve. You can always check out those interviews on KARVradio.com or on KARV AM 610 and 93.1 FM every Friday morning at 8:30. We mentioned that right here at the top of the show because our guest today will be our guest on Friday, and that is Miss Ginny Baker. She's the executive director of CASA here in this area. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. We've been needing to have you on for a while, and here we are. So thank you for being here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
There is so much that we could talk about. We had Bethany Bratton on a few weeks ago. We actually aired her spotlight again yesterday just to kind of give a refresher course to people as this airs anyway. And one of the things that has always struck me about this is with any nonprofit, there's a particular amount of sacrifice of time. There's a particular amount of sacrifice for, emotional heartache. I mean, there's just going to be some of that when you work in the nonprofit world. In this nonprofit, however, it's 100% guaranteed. And I don't say that to be a downer to begin. I say that to say this is some of the most important work that's happening in the River Valley. First off, talk about what it is that you do, and then talk about the heart behind it.
So, as you mentioned, I'm the director for the program, and so my main responsibilities right now are just kind of to oversee the program. But most importantly, the work that we do is support our volunteers in the work that they're doing. And as you said, it's emotionally challenging, and this kind of work doesn't end at 4 o'clock when you go home every day.
Sure.
We see the worst of the worst, but we also see the best of the best. We get to see happy endings. We get to see children's lives change completely for the better. But it is emotionally tolling, the things that we hear and that we see. But it's our volunteers that are doing the work. They're the ones with their feet on the ground, going in the homes and visiting the kids and the parents and the teachers and the neighbors and everyone that's pertinent in these children's lives.
One thing that I have seen over and over again in this area seems to be this attitude of, well, man, it really couldn't happen here. I mean, and truthfully, I mean, when we look at statistics, it looks like perhaps maybe the trend is going in the right direction. I'm not sure. Still a great place to live, but the idea of it can't happen here has to go away, doesn't it?
Yeah, it happens everywhere. It happens in small towns. It happens in big towns, rural, suburban. It's happening everywhere. It's just the work that we do is confidential. It's very rare that you will hear about a child abuse case in your community because of the confidential work that we do. Last year we served over 170 kids in Pope, Johnson, and Franklin County. So it's here, and it is happening.
When we're talking about abuse, I think one thing that people always tend to believe is that it is, potentially, explicit in its nature, for lack of a better word. But that's not always what we see. What kind of abuses are we seeing?
We see all of it. One of the main factors in over 90% of the cases that we work with is drugs. Meth specifically. Apparently heroin is making a comeback. I don't really know if that's the appropriate way to say that, but 90% of our cases are drug related. So, but we see it all. We We have infants that come into care the day they're born, under what's called Garrett's Law. They're born with drugs in their system. We have volunteers who have sat in the ICU with these babies when they're born, taking shifts to sit with them along with DHS, all the way up to teenagers, and everything in between. We see severe neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, educational abuse, neglect. We see it all.
When, I think too, there might be a misnomer when it comes to what the word even neglect means, and perhaps I'm getting into semantics that you may not be comfortable with, but to me, this is a far broader term than really we look at. Am I correct in that assumption?
You're absolutely correct. It's a very broad, and there's so many factors that play into it, from something as simple as the age of the child. So yeah, it's extremely broad.
I am curious too, when you say educational neglect, what encompasses educational neglect?
I mean, there's several things that encompass it. Mainly, not sending your kids to school, or not making your kids go to school. You know, we've seen cases come in with young children who haven't been to school in months, just because the parents weren't taking them. And then we've had cases where we've gotten older youth, teenagers in care, who were just refusing to go to school, and their parents just, didn't want to fight that battle with them anymore. And then you've got kids who move constantly. They've been in 8 schools in 1 year, and they're supposed to be in the 4th grade, and they're in the 2nd grade because they're not at a school for more than, a few weeks at a time.
When you have a child come into CASA, again, I say that there's misnomers about this because I had them. Maybe I'm the only one, but I
doubt that.
Don't feel like I am.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That when you have a child come in, that there's just kind of this idea in my mind of how it goes there. It's almost like, okay, they're probably put into the system at that point, and then they're placed with the family, and then, God knows what happens after that. Basically, in my mind, that's how that works. And you just hope for the best outcome. What CASA does, though, is it comes alongside these children to kind of walk through these different battles. So when a child comes into your care, step by step, what happens?
When a child's brought into DHS custody, a probable cause hearing is set. That's the first hearing in a case. And that's typically when Judge Coker will appoint a CASA to them. Sometimes he'll wait till the adjudication hearing, depending on the case or, what's going on with it. But typically we get appointed right away. And if we have a volunteer available, which we do more than not, we write up a court order for them. The judge signs it. And then we connect them in our database for that child's file. And in there is whatever information that we have, which will include the affidavit as to why the child was removed, who the parents are, relatives, all the information that's known up to that point.
Sure. And
then what the volunteer does is it's very similar to being a DHS caseworker, only volunteers only have 1 or 2 cases where caseworkers at DHS, sometimes, their caseloads can be anywhere from 15 to 40. It's a lot.
We should pause right there for just a moment and move forward with what you're saying, because what you just said is incredibly important to make sure everybody listens to and hears. DHS caseworkers, it's not that they are not trying to make some of these moves happen. It's not that they're not trying to get some of these kids removed from homes they need to be removed from. There's not enough of them for the work that is being done. So that should 100% be something that is said and focused on, because DHS incredibly overwhelmed across the state.
Yes, the system's broke. We all know the system is broke. Unfortunately, a lot of people relate that to the people working at DHS, and it's just simply not true. The folks that I've been here for 20 years, and I've seen many caseworkers come and go, and they all want to help. They all want to make a difference, but it's difficult,
Sure.
when you have a DHS program that's supposed to have 7 caseworkers and they have 2, and they're trying to hold caseloads of 20, 30, 40, 50. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of an example I try to give people, which isn't really even that accurate of a one, is, if you're parents and you've got 3 or 4 kids and they're all in sports and they all get to be at different places at the same time every night, kind of thing, it's overwhelming. So imagine that tenfold being a caseworker, and these kids are all over the state. It's not like they're all placed right here in Russellville. So it is overwhelming, and that's one of the reasons why CASA is so important. The volunteer is that one constant person throughout the whole case. Their placements change, their schools change, their caseworkers change, their attorneys change, everything changes for them. But the volunteer is that one constant familiar face for them. And so when there is turnover, and we are in the courtroom, that CASA volunteer is very important because they know the case, they know the children, they know the family.
You were mentioning something before we talked about DHS, the step-by-step side. So once they come in, they've been appointed an advocate, and then that advocate essentially, as you mentioned, just kind of walks through this process with them. Talk to me a little bit about the relationship between the child and the advocate. I would assume that at first there was probably some apprehension, but then you would hope, or at least I would hope, that there's trust or even not a camaraderie, but maybe friendship that would help blossom from that. And is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, every case is different. Every child is different that we work with. Every family is different. And so you have a huge spectrum. But for the most part, I mean, obviously for really young children, they don't even really understand, who everybody's role is, and they just know who's around them. For older kids, though, there's sometimes some of our kids who have been through the system before are very hesitant when yet another person is coming to talk to them, right?
Sure.
They start to feel like that's all they ever talk about is, the things going on in foster care. But a lot of times, they become very comfortable with their advocate, and they learn to trust them. They're seeing them come visit them. They're seeing them being their voice in the courtroom. We have one case right now. It's a teenage girl. She's been in care for a while, and she's struggling. She's got a lot of anger built up, and she's a right to. She's been through a lot. And her CASA volunteer is phenomenal, and it's such a perfect match for her. She calls her every night. She calls her CASA volunteer every night. They don't talk about the case. She just calls to talk about her day and ask questions that, most kids ask their parents,
Right.
So yeah, the relationships vary based on, the age and the situation. But I think for older youth in care, the CASA volunteers aren't just a volunteer for them. They're also, someone like a mentor for them almost.
When I was going through ministry school, it was told to me in ministry that if you're not close enough to the person for them to break your heart, you're not close enough. Now, I would assume that in this instance, there has to be that line there somewhere. But is it also fair to say that, hey, this is going to hurt some?
Absolutely. I mean, you're dealing with kids, right? So, you're told in training, to try to keep a boundary there, to where when the case does close, it's not a huge loss for you not to be in that child's life anymore. But like you said, it those relationships build depending on the case and the situation. And a lot of our CASA volunteers, even after the case is closed, with permission of the family that the child is with, continue those relationships with those kids. We have CASA volunteers whose kids will still call them after. I remember one case we had with a youth. It was a teenage boy, and he ended up being reunified with his parents. And he still continued to call his CASA volunteer all the time and ask her things like, how do I set up a bank account? Or I have a job interview next week. Can you help me? Stuff that, he didn't feel like his parents could help him with.
Sure.
We all need that person in our life, forever. I mean, even at our age, we have people we still call and rely on.
Every day. I've got that. Day. Everybody needs a Master Yoda.
Exactly. Yes. Right. Yes, absolutely. And for some of these kids in foster care, especially when they first come in, they don't have that. They don't have that person they can, relate to or feel safety, especially when they're in a facility or a shelter or, it's sad.
But there's positives here too. I mean, we started out with some of the gloom and doom, and part of the reason for that was to make sure that we've established the gravity of what it is that CASA does, because there is so much that goes into it. There's so much important work that's happening. But because of that important work, because of the walk through the trenches, man, we've seen a lot of success stories, haven't we?
Oh, those are what keep you going.
Yeah.
That's what keeps you in this work. Is seeing those success stories, from the little successes to the what we call the miracle cases, the cases that couldn't have had a more perfect ending. So yeah.
Without naming names, can you give an example?
Oh, I could give you so many examples.
Let's hear a couple.
One of my favorite CASA stories, just to show how something very simple can completely change everything for a child. We had a little girl. She came into foster care. I guess she was around 4 or 5 years old. Her parents had been keeping her outside with the dogs. When she came into foster care, she wasn't talking. She had not been potty trained. She would bark at you. It was pretty sad. The parents had been heavily involved in drugs for some time. It was a sad situation all the way around. Well, this little girl came into foster care, and she was struggling. She needed all these therapies. Well, we were lucky enough at that time, and we had a volunteer that we appointed her, and he went out to get some coloring books and stuff and sat with this child. She was difficult to communicate with.
Sure.
And he was just coloring with her, and he was asking her some questions, stuff like trying to figure out some information. He would ask her, what Christmas memories do you have, or stuff like that. Well, at one point when he asked her about Christmas, she mentioned something about a mama or something, or Mimi or something like that. So he's like, she's talking about a grandma. Well, the parents weren't staying in contact with us or DHS, so we had no way to follow up with them. So being the amazing CASA volunteer he was, and this was 15 years ago, got on the internet, did some searching and whatnot, came across somebody that we thought might be related to this little girl in Missouri. Gets the phone number, picks up the phone, calls, and it ends up it's her grandmother.
Oh, wow.
So the mom and the child had been living with the grandma a few years earlier, and mom had gotten addicted to drugs, and mom and grandma had a falling out, and mom took her daughter and moved here to Arkansas. And grandma hadn't heard from her. She had no idea where her daughter or granddaughter was. No clue. And when this CASA volunteer called and asked her if she was related, she
it is okay to get emotional on this show.
Yeah,
yes.
she broke down crying, and the first thing she said was, "I have been praying every night for this phone call." Went to the next court hearing, asked for a home study on grandma. ICPC home studies, that's a home study you have to do out of state. Those are fun.
Sure.
And they take some time, but long story short, she's with her grandma and she's doing amazing. A phone call. It was a phone call.
And what's so amazing to me is that kind of research, it takes a little bit of time, but maybe not more than a day or two. Especially with all the information that we have now, and it just took someone taking the time to change somebody's life. That's incredible. We are talking to Ginny Baker. She's the executive director of CASA right here in Russellville. There is so much more to talk about when it comes to CASA, but when we come back, we're talking to Ginny about Ginny. She has no idea what's coming up next. Stay with us. More Spotlight on the other side. And welcome to your Game Day Spotlight, presented by Alathus Realty. If you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668, or cruise on over to russellvilleliving.com. Today, in studio, we have Miss Tech Olivia Battles. Olivia, welcome to the Spotlight.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Your favorite part of Arkansas Tech so far?
Oh, my favorite part? I would say actually working on campus, which a lot of people hate work, but I've really enjoyed working in admissions because I'm getting to connect with students that are here now, but also future students, people who are wanting to come here. And so I kind of get that opportunity to mold their future and choose which way they want to go as far as coming to school here. And that's been amazing for me.
And we welcome you back into the Spotlight. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Drew Brent. And if you're in the market to buy or sell your home, you need to call us today. It's 479-968-5668. Cruise on over to russellvilleliving.com. You can also like us on Facebook. Please like us on Facebook. And then check out the entire Spotlight archive on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple Tunes, wherever you find your podcasts, you can listen to the Spotlight right here. And then coming up on Friday morning at 8:30, this lady right here, Ginny Baker, will be joining us, Executive Director of CASA. And we were talking before the break about the success stories. We were talking about all of the great things that happen with CASA, and we're going to get back to that. But what I promised before the break was that we were going to talk to Ginny about Ginny. So here's the question. I asked this to everybody, and it's a fascinating question. If you go back in time to maybe 10 to 20-year-old Ginny, and you tell her, hey, this is where you're ending up, are you surprised by that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I grew up in the Seattle area, and just the fact that I ended up in Arkansas still kind of blows my mind to a certain extent. But, you know, there's a plan for everybody, and I feel like I'm where I need to be. So, yeah, no, I would not have pictured this then.
Let's talk about Seattle then, the home of the Seahawks and Starbucks.
Yeah.
And you come down to Razorback country, which is home of, by the way, cheese dip. Cheese dip was invented in Arkansas, folks. So Seattle can have their Seahawks and the coffee. We've got Razorbacks and Woo Pig queso. How did that happen?
Like in a blink of an eye. My husband was in the Navy up there. He was stationed on the USS California, and he was about to get out. And so we had kind of made a list of where we wanted to go and where we didn't want to go. And the headhunter he was working with called him up and said, hey, we're going to send you out for an interview in Arkansas. And we're like, wow, that, you know, it wasn't on either of our lists. And he came out for an interview, loved it out here, came back. We talked about it, and bam, loaded up the house and the kids and the dogs and the...
when you know, I'm always fascinated too, because we do have a lot of transplants here who are in positions of great influence, like yourself, Danielle Hausnick. These are people who were not necessarily from here who wind up in these spots. Was there a culture shock for you when you got here?
Oh, Drew, you have no idea. Yes, it was intense, and I was pregnant also. Huge culture shock. I think the hardest part for me was not knowing anyone. For those who know me, I'm slightly social.
What?
I know, kind of weird. Shocking for some people. And I didn't know anybody, and so that was really difficult for me. And that's actually how I got involved with CASA. Is I heard about, you know, this little program. And I thought, you know, the only way I'm gonna meet people is to get out there. So I thought, well, I'll volunteer somewhere. And heard about CASA, and literally had the thought of what you said earlier, like how much abuse could be in this little town, you know, and was completely surprised by it. And I signed up to be a CASA volunteer, and well, here we are 20 years later.
So you've only been in the area for about 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
When you did move, and we talked about culture shock, but what was the one thing that probably shocked you the most?
One thing that shocked me the most. I don't know if there was one big thing. I think it was just a whole lot of little things all at once.
Sure.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by sweet tea? That happens to be a question that we get a lot.
Yes, and I am not a tea fan, and so, and when you say you don't like tea in public here, you get looks like you're supposed to like tea.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Right?
Right, exactly.
And I have tried to like tea. I promise. I'm not a tea drinker now.
Coffee, I'm assuming.
Starbucks.
Of course, Starbucks. Of course.
Yeah,
You're from Seattle.
I mean...
My wife is from Russellville, and she is a Starbucks addict. God help us if we ever move to the Northwest.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
I would have to buy stock in Starbucks. We would not.
Starbucks was started the same year I was born, so it's it's kind of a.
So
I think it's just kind of meant to be.
What's amazing to me that it's such a young company.
Exactly
right.
That's right.
Talking to Ginny Baker of CASA, we talked earlier before the break about some great things that happen in CASA. Those great things are made possible by volunteers. Let's talk about your volunteer base right now because, man, you've got some great ones.
Yes, we do. We have the best volunteers. They're absolutely the foundation of what we do. And we typically average about 80 volunteers per year. COVID has affected that. I mean,
sure.
What hasn't COVID affected? In 2020, we reached a long, hard-working goal of serving every child, having a volunteer for every kid that came into care. And then COVID happened, and we were able to still maintain that through the first year or so of COVID. But this last year has just, I don't know what has changed, but we're down to averaging around 64 or 65 right now. And we're back to having kids waiting for our CASA, which is, it's sad, but we're working hard. We're trying every recruitment tactic we can come up with. It's if everybody could just come in and kind of get an idea as to what we do, they would be hooked. And if they have the time to do it, they would do it. There's no other volunteer experience like being a CASA volunteer. You're literally changing the life of a child. And not just for today and not just for next month, but for the rest of their lives and for their children's lives.
And before we move on past that, tell me how people can get involved.
Oh, easy. It's so easy. You can go to our website, arcasa5.org, and click Apply Now. It's a simple process to get started. You can call our office at 479-880-1195. You can message us on our Facebook page. Just give us a call, and our extraordinary resource coordinator, Bethany, who you just interviewed, she will be the one to reach out and contact you. And she'll walk you through the process. You do have to be 21 years of age. You are put through background checks. And you will go through a pretty intense training. It's 30 hours. I say intense. It sounds like a lot, but once you get involved in the training, everybody loves it. And they're actually like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how fast that went. And,
right.
Yeah. But the training's important. You're working with families at the most difficult times in their lives, and we cover everything from the juvenile laws to the court process to how to do a home visit, how to write a CASA court report, all of those things. So, and then after you get through the training, you're actually sworn in by the amazing Honorable Judge Ken Coker, and then you're assigned to a case.
We're going to ask a few more questions, Jenny, to wrap this up. By the way, it's arcasa5.com.
Org.
We'll have that on the screen for you, and we'll also have that in the links below if you're looking to volunteer. Donations possible as well, or?
Absolutely. We would never turn down a donation.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. You can donate also on our website. You can come by our office. You can mail it to us. We will come pick it up. However you want to do that. But yes, we accept all donations, monetary, diapers, you name it. Anything that helps the kids that we work with.
Let's try something new as we close out the spotlight today. We're going to play a little game with Miss Ginny that I 100% did not tell her that we were going to do. Let's find out some information that we may not know about you. So this is going to be rapid fire, quick questions.
Why?
We'll just see how you do. It's all trivia. I'm just kidding. It's not trivia. All right. These are questions that you can answer. All right. Number one, you have one album to listen to the rest of your life. What album are you listening to?
Any of Nirvana's albums.
Okay, you're Seattle.
It's not just because they're just my absolute favorite band in the world. They were AC/DC.
Okay, but still, that Seattle connection.
I just love Nirvana.
Sports fan?
Yes. Redskins, believe it or not Seahawks. I know. I don't know why. I don't know where that came from, but I'm a Redskin fan.
What's their new mascot name going to be? Do you know?
Are they even I haven't.
They're the Washington football team right now.
I'm still mad that I can't say I'm a Redskin fan anymore. I don't even know how to say that anymore. So I don't know.
Oh, we're living in Dallas Cowboy country.
Right?
And I'm an Eagles fan. So technically you can't like me anymore either.
Oh, man. We were
really
getting along so well.
We were really doing well just then. Favorite movie?
Oh. You know, you get asked that so many times in life, and I really don't have one favorite movie. I love movies and I watch a lot of movies, but I don't.
If you had to watch a movie right now, what movie are you putting in?
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's so many. I don't have a go-to movie really. I know, is that weird?
Yeah, I mean, it is for me because I've got a go-to movie. But
what's yours?
It's a tie between Citizen Kane and 12 Angry Men.
Ooh, both very good.
Very, very good.
Both
and then
very good.
and then I throw in Star Trek First Contact because that doesn't make any sense, but it's going in there.
And you got to mix it up, right?
Oh yeah, you got to mix it up.
Yeah,
I mean, not everything can be black and white, and my wife was 100% not going to watch that with me. Ginny Baker, thank you so much for being on the show. The final question of this rapid fire is there a weird quirk or something strange about you that most people don't know?
That most people don't know? I don't think so.
Is there a weird quirk about you that most people do know?
Oh, I have many weird quirks, I guess. My staff gives me a hard time because I put ranch and everything, but I don't think that's weird. I think most everyone does that, right?
That's a very Southern thing to do.
Is it? See, so it's not weird.
I mean, that's a very Southern thing. Ranch dressing with everything.
See, that's not weird then.
No, I don't think that's weird at all.
Yeah, they
I
give
think
me a hard time for it, but I don't think it's weird.
Well, then you need new staff. That's what we're gonna have to do.
Oh, I couldn't live without them.
Well,
I don't know.
then tell them to get off the ranch thing. Ranch and sweet tea, and it's all gonna be good. Ginny Baker, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
And you can join Ginny and myself on Carve coming up this Friday morning. That is going to start at 8:30. That's on AM 610 and 93.1 FM and on carveradio.com. That's your spotlight for today. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Drew Brent, and if you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today, 479-968-5668. Cruise on over to RussellvilleLiving.com. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.